Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Authors on Mission, the podcast committed to delving into top-tier insights and strategies employed by established experts to achieve success, all while inspiring authors. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission, and I am honored to welcome Tristian Smith, author of Against All Odds, a memoir. Tristan's story is nothing short of extraordinary, from navigating nearly 30 foster homes and 13 different schools after losing his mother, to graduating college, becoming a U.S. Army officer, and now serving as a dedicated advocate for foster youth. His memoir is all about the story of personal triumph, but also serves as a beacon for those facing similar challenges and a call for reform in our foster care system. Tristan, thank you so much for joining us today on the Authors on Mission podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, I'm really looking forward to diving into this. Your story is nothing short of remarkable, like I said, and I think everybody today is going to learn a lot, not only about writing, but also about your experiences in the military and also, of course, growing up through all these foster homes. So let's talk about those foster homes to begin with. And okay. I'm sure that, transitioning from all those different places did, of course, shape you and your sense of identity. So I'm wondering if you want to talk about that a little bit, how the transitions affected you as you were growing up and forming your sense of the world. And of course, what ultimately led you to writing your book.
So I think moving through so many foster homes and the nearly 390,000 kids that are currently in foster care, going through so many placements, I think it sabotages you from a social development standpoint. After a certain amount of moves, you start to mentally stop unpacking your bags. Like you're expecting to move on. So you stop trying to make those connections with people, whether it's your foster parents, whether it's classmates at school, trying to make friends. You may get behind in your academics because during that time, you're not necessarily focused on your academics. You're just focusing on trying to get to the next day. It's almost like you're in a survival mode, so to speak. So you just don't have that constant and consistent support system, just isn't there. And so foster youth often lose their identity of who they are, what their potential is, and what they can go on and do once they get out of the foster care system. So I think that was probably the biggest hindrance to me.
Yeah, and I can see how that's a huge thing that affected you. And because you weren't able to form those connections, I'm sure there was even more of a sense of your own identity not being able to be shaped as it usually would, right? Because you're kind of having to reform your own beliefs and surroundings all these different times. I'm sure that was really difficult to do. Would you mind speaking about perhaps as you began to grow up, for example, you became more of an advocate, which I guess in a way shaped itself to your identity, if you get what I'm trying to say here, because you're now a court-approved special advocate, a member of the Foster Care Review Board. So what motivated you to return there, and how did that, shape your own career?
So it was part of my transition out of the military.
Right.
I had to medically retire out of the military because of some health issues. And so as I was making my transition out of the military, I thought it would, be a great idea to go ahead and start working on my book. And then next was whatever next city I relocated to, I wanted to get involved with foster youth. Because of how hectic my military life was, I couldn't really get involved in the capacity that I wanted to do. So I moved up here to Nebraska last year and immediately started reaching out to people on LinkedIn. And so one of the first people to read my book was the state director of Nebraska CASA. She loved my book. We met for coffee and she told me, "You would make a great CASA." And so that was exactly how I got in. I started creating that path for myself. And then maybe a couple months later, I became a member of the foster care review board here, which is where one Wednesday of the month, we sit and we review anywhere from 5 to 7 cases. And we're trying to help with the decision making when it comes to placements and stability for these kids, because that's the most important part. If you can stabilize them, then you can start to focus on the trauma that they're going through. You can start focusing on academics, improving behaviors, things of that nature. So eventually I would like to become a foster parent once I'm married, and that's something my wife would like to get into. But this is where I'm at right now, and that's how, to go from being a youth in need to servicing youth in need is kind of a full circle moment for me.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of going back to what I said before about your identity being shaped by all of this, in a positive way, it's made you more of an advocate because you want to help people. And that's now a new trait of yours. And that's kind of, I would say, would you agree that it's your mission right now to make sure that you're able to bring reform?
Yes, exactly. So eventually I want to get into the legislature part of how we make laws and how we implement legislation for foster youth, because we don't allocate enough funding for foster youth, for the foster care system in general. We send billions of dollars in foreign aid to other countries to help them out. But what about the future of the children that are here in our own country? Two populations that are very near and dear to my heart are foster youth and veterans. So if we can't take care of people, we can't take care of our kids, and we can't take care of those who have, been a service to our country, why are we spending so much money in other places other than our own country? So.
Understood. Yeah, and that's kind of interesting to think about, because you do have these two sides that you want to help, the veterans and the foster care system. So I'm sure in your book, it speaks a lot about, how we can actually implement such change. You mentioned to me actually that you wanted to share some actionable gold nuggets from your experiences, ways people can actually take steps forward. So I'm wondering, what would you consider to be one of these golden nuggets?
When it comes to the foster parents themselves, you're the first person a child sees when they wake up and the last person they see when they go to bed. So I think if you look at it in that perspective, you have a lot of impact on how their day can start off and how it's going to end. So what are we doing to speak life into these youth who, like me, have watched a parent die, who have been through abuse, who some of these kids even have drug addictions. Their parents were doing drugs while they were pregnant with them, and there's a drug addiction there. So what are we doing to speak life into these kids and let them know that we see the potential that they have, so that they eventually can see their own potential? There were a lot of people that saw greatness in me before I recognized it in myself. So I think that foster parents have a huge role in the way that a child, changes their behavior, the way a child can change their outlook on life, going from a pessimistic view of the world to more of an optimistic view that, hey, I'm in the foster care system, but I have people that care about me, see my potential, and want to see me be great once, I either go back to my family, I'm reunified, or I age out and I decide, hey, I want to go to college, or I want to go to trade school, or I want to go off and join the military. There's no reason that we should have so many homeless former foster youth or those with mental health issues. And I feel like if we allocate funding to that, we can make that change. But it starts at home. A child outside of school is going to spend the next majority of his time at home with the foster parents. And then another nugget I would add, so I wrote a chapter to foster youth specifically about what their role is in making sure that they can achieve their goals. And it starts with things like listening. You can have really good foster parents, you can have a really good support system, but if you're not willing to listen, take advice, and you just want to walk around with this I hate the world mentality, you're not going to get very far. Picking good friends is another one. Choosing people to be part of your circle that are going to add value to your life. You don't want to hang out with people that are always getting in trouble or being disciplinary issues, whether it's at school or in the neighborhood. And then focusing on education. The better your grades are in high school, the more opportunities that will be allotted to you once you age out of the foster care system. At your education and the work that you do as a high school student is going to open doors for you. They have all these educational programs for foster youth. And so they want you, there are people that want you to be great, but you have to want it for yourself at the same time.
Yeah, understood. And I guess that kind of goes directly into what you mentioned in your book. You advocate strongly for a bend, don't break mindset over victim mentality. So I can see how that's something that you strongly instill upon these foster kids, because, you can't just sit back. You should be working actively to make a change. And I know it's not hard, it's not easy, but your book is obviously a great way for them to see an example of how it can be done.
Yes. I think not just foster youth, but I think the world in general has
that is true.
The world in general is just soft. Majority of people don't know how to withstand adversity. They don't know how to pull the lessons out of adversity. And instead, they want to throw a lifelong pity party and blame my skin color, my gender. My mother died and I didn't have a 2-parent household and I didn't, go to the best schools. And, eventually you have to make good decisions. And the better your decisions are, it won't matter where you went to school. It won't matter if you grew up in a 2-parent household. It won't matter, if you're Asian, Black, white, Hispanic, whatever. There are places for you to go and do great things. We have thousands of colleges and universities with thousands of career fields that you can choose from. What we don't want you to do is become a victim, walk around with a victim mentality. All these bad things happen to me, because everybody goes through adversity. But life and history remembers those who are able to conquer adversity and be able to still go on and do great things as a member of society.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that you're able to connect it not just to that one specific group, but to everybody. Because you're right, everybody does, think, oh, like, woe is me, everything, I can't get past this or that. But people have it even harder than you, which you need to put in perspective. And
Exactly.
yeah. And, one of the quotes that I have written down here, one thing that I think relates to this as well, is how you mentioned that success does require not only wise decisions, but the company of those who uplift you and the humility to need guidance. So, in that way, kind of, you need to have that positive mindset and make those choices to help yourself. But sometimes you need a little bit of guidance and help. I mean, you spoke of these people before, the people who saw potential in you and wanted to help you too. I'm wondering if you'd like to give an example of one of those people, or perhaps offer some.
So I've had, foster parents. I talk about my first really good foster home. They took me in when I was probably 11 or 12. And by that time, I'd already been in nearly 20 foster homes. And so they wanted to take me out of being in a traditional foster home where you may have 3 or 4 different kids to where I'm in what they call therapeutic foster care, where you're the only child. So you can kind of get that one-on-one attention and you can get the support that you need from the foster parents that are in the house. So they took me on and they made me a part of their family. They made sure that I had a great Christmas, that I had a great birthday, that they celebrated important events in my life, but they also allowed me to maintain my identity. They were Caucasian foster parents, but they allowed me to listen to music that may have been closer to my culture. They didn't try to force their culture on me. They took me to church. They took me out to eat and on family outings. And they weren't worried about forcing or trying to get their money back from the state for things that they did for me. Like, they knew I needed it, so they went on ahead and did it. And, I haven't spoken to them in 20 years.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, over 20 years. And I'll never forget them. So,
And do you mind me asking any reason why you're not in touch anymore? Or
we just lost contact.
Mm.
I ended up getting taken out of their home because my caseworker in the state, in their infinite wisdom, thought, it'd be a good idea to take me out of the home to go be adopted with my younger brother. And at that time, me and my younger brother absolutely did not get along. Now, 100% of that was my fault. I just picked fights and didn't want to be around my younger brother. But they took me out of the home and they paired us up with these adoptive parents. And after about 4 months, they ended up giving us back to the state.
Wow.
So by the time, I wanted to go back and live with them, they had already taken another foster youth. So, after that, I just lost contact with them.
Really unfortunate. And I'm sure that happens all the time too. I'm sure, is that one of the legislative changes you would want to make something to reform that kind of stuff like that? I'm not even sure how that could be avoided, but
I feel like we have to do better when it comes to supporting foster parents. Foster parents are not compensated well for the work that they have to do. We're asking them to be therapists. We're asking them to take care of kids with behavioral issues or trauma that, you don't really see from, the outside world when it comes to non-foster youth. So we have to do better of compensating the foster parents better, compensating the caseworkers more, because I had 7 caseworkers in my 10 years in the foster care system, and there was just no consistency. So there would be times where I was in need of health services and my caseworker switched, and it would be months before they got to me. So I feel like all of those things can greatly impact the stability of a kid because they end up feeling forgotten.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I can see how all of these changes, if we are able to find a way, would definitely benefit, but it is complicated. So, first step, of course, is getting people aware, putting it into things like your book, for example, to, shine a light on it. Thinking perhaps this is a good time to segue into the book itself and the writing process and everything in between. So I'm wondering, first off, how did you approach writing about all these traumatic experiences while also maintaining your own well-being and also articulating it clearly and balancing, facts versus prose? I'm sure it was a bunch to work out.
So the first thing I did was I started looking for a company that could help me structure my book, structure my story, and convey it in a way that was easily digestible by, the readers. And so I found an organization called Publify Press. They told me, I sent them a kind of a one pager of what I wanted to do with my book and my story and who I wanted this book to be for. And, they said that they could help me articulate this to the best of my ability. I was assigned an editor, and for about 6 months, we would just talk every other weekend for an hour, 2 hours about each part of my life. And we really wanted to get the details based on what I could remember. I don't talk about all 30 foster homes because that would have been a really boring book. But I talked about the foster parents who made a difference in my life. I wanted to give them their flowers and give them a part in my story and my success. It took about a year. We did, I think, 3 different edits to the manuscript. And then within a year, it was ready for book development. So it was very time consuming, but because, I was transitioning out of the military and hadn't started my next job, I had the time, and it came out pretty well based on the people who have read my book. They've enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad that you were able to find a team of people to help you out and share your story. I know a lot of beginning authors might feel a little bit nervous to put their words on a page or they don't know exactly how to structure it or, the correct way to deliver it. So it's great that you had a team to help you out. And of course, the weekly meetings is also really beneficial. That's actually what we do here in Authors on Mission as well, helping people tell their stories. So we're very similar to who you work with too. We, find people where you help work with them one-on-one to help them get their books out. So very similar to that. It's good to know that there's many different companies out there who help people just like yourself get those stories out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of to transition a little bit into, more of the book and everything there, I'm wondering if there was a certain part that was perhaps more difficult to share than others?
Not necessarily. But at my age, I'm 36 now, and a lot of that stuff happened, I'm almost over 20 years ago. So none of that is hard to talk about or articulate. It was more about getting it accurate. So,
Right.
There were a couple of times where we had to call my little brother and get him on the phone because he remembers a lot of stuff that I don't even remember. And he was 4 when we got placed in foster care. And so for him to have the memory that he has was pretty incredible. And he was able to contribute to ensuring my book maintained, accuracy. And, we were able to get those details in there.
Okay, good. It's, fact verification is a huge part to play as well to everybody listening today, writing your own memoirs. Call somebody who also have the same experiences, call somebody who might have some insights. You always need, multiple perspectives to add in to make sure you're getting it as accurate as you can. So it's good that you're able to connect with him again and, get it all out there in that way.
Yep.
I'm wondering, do you happen to have a copy of the book with you today?
I do.
All right, there we go. That's Against All Odds. Look at that. Nice self-portrait there. Very eye-catching too. And what's the winner right there on the cover? I can't quite see that.
So it was given the International Impact Book Award.
Wow.
It's a book competition that I entered my book in, and they judge it based off of content, structure, and a few other things. And, I was one of, it was probably about 17 winners for last year. So
that's incredible. Congratulations.
Yes.
It's always good to have a seal on the cover too. That's another way to draw readers in. When they see that badge, they know that what they're about to read is some quality content. So that's amazing. Yeah. It's a good accomplishment too. So congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I'm wondering, do you happen to have any other bits of advice for the writers out there today who might want to who are now inspired by your story and want to share their own memoirs?
So I would just say be authentic with your story. Don't be afraid to share it. A lot of people, specifically foster youth, don't feel like their story is worth hearing. And I would tell you otherwise, that, we have nearly 400,000 foster youth that need your story. They want to see someone, they want to hear someone who has been in their shoes, experience some of the adversity that they're going through, because it just comes off more authentic to them than just reading or listening to some, famous person who wants to just come and give an hour of their time, collect a paycheck, and go on. So be authentic with your story. Make sure that, when you get ready to do it, you don't take any shortcuts. I think I've spent well over $20,000 on my book. It was an investment, but it's mine. Like, nobody can take my book or my story away. There are cheaper options out there, but do your research on publishing agencies, self-publishing agencies if you want to self-publish, and talk to people and make sure that they're going to help you create a book and articulate your story in the tone that you want to present it in.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that with us. And you're right, you can't just take shortcuts. You need to make sure you're doing it exactly the right way. And even if it is a time investment or a financial investment, it's important to just get your story out there and make sure that others can learn from it. Because in your case, especially, you're advocating for very important topics. And, in the future, if you ever do decide to write another book, there's many other companies out there who could definitely help you, and perhaps for not that same extraordinary price point that you've been working with. But I'm happy to know that it all worked out for you. So that's incredible to know. And to everybody out there, again, do the same thing. Follow in Tristan's footsteps. Well, thank you for joining us today. It's really been a pleasure chatting with you. Your story does remind us, authorship isn't just putting words on a page. It's about taking your experiences, your memories, using that to help others. So it's been an incredible chat with you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Of course. And to everybody listening today, if you want to learn more about Tristan's work or connect with him, well, Tristan, where can we find you? What's the best method to connect?
So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also check out my book on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Nobles. It's on Books A Million. I spend more time on LinkedIn than I do Instagram. I don't have Facebook. I don't have TikTok. I try to stay off social media outside of,
Probably a good choice.
LinkedIn. Yeah. But yeah, if you have any questions, you can also email me at smitht1988@gmail.com. And if you have any questions about me or the book, or would like for me to come and speak to your organization, you can send me an email and I'll promptly respond back to it.
Perfect. Well, you heard it here, everybody. We're going to put the links to all of that in the description box of this podcast today, so you can go over and click on it. And speaking engagement, that's another amazing way to Tristan to share your message, not only to promote the book, but also to get these ideas out there so we can start making those changes. So please, everybody, reach out, get connected, check out the book. Some amazing stuff here. Just as Tristan's stories taught us, everybody listening today, your past circumstances don't define your future. You can take it, you can learn from it, you can grow. So everybody, until next time, this is also Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer, Authors on Mission. And here we're dedicated to helping you stay ahead of the curve in publishing and in life. Thank you for listening, and remember to keep writing, keep leading, keep inspiring. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.